This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 463 for the week of December 23rd, 2018. Hello, welcome back to Kanzenshuu,
the podcast,
an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball and Galactic Patrol fan site.
Kanzenshuu.
Yes, we cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. I'm not going to say this time that we are on a weekly roll and nothing will interrupt our schedule as we charge forward, because as soon as I say something like that, something pops up and I don't get an episode out on time. But Julian, you join me once again. Hello, good sir.
Hello there.
All right, it's Julian. It's me. My name is Mike, Vegito EX. We're back at you this time with Dragon Ball content, with Dragon Ball Heroes content, with non-Dragon Ball Galactic Patrol content, which then loops all of it back around again to Dragon Ball Galactic Patrol content.
Pretty much, yeah.
Julian, I adored Jaco when it came out. We talked a lot about Jaco. We reviewed it ourselves here on the podcast. We reviewed it multiple times over in written form. And suddenly the Galactic Patrol is relevant all over again. So I said, hey, why don't we bring things all the way back around to the beginning? We've done kind of this random series of primer episodes here in the podcast. We've done stuff like that for Dr. Slump, for other assorted things with the Dragon Ball franchise. We're going to do it for the Galactic Patrol, and we're going to tie it in with ongoing Dragon Ball stuff, which I didn't really expect things to go this way. If you're following along with the Dragon Ball Super manga, we have entered a new manga exclusive arc, the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc. Not only is Jaco back, but a whole bunch of new characters have been introduced. Not only that, but over in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, we have a new Galactic Patrol member that may not be kind of on the up and up. So it all ties together wonderfully. So we're going to talk about the new arc a little bit. We're going to talk about the new character in the game a little bit. We're going to talk about Sachie. We're going to talk about Jiya. And then it comes back to Jaco. And then basically you're in present day. And by present day, I mean 2013. And then you jump ahead to 2018. You were truly in present day. That sounds like a lot of content. It sounds like it's all over the place. And it kind of is. However, I guarantee you that all of it is related and intertwined. I don't think I've mentioned this for a long time, if at all, but for a long time I've actually been posting timestamps with the episodes and all of the various postings on the website, the forum post, even on the YouTube posting. So if you want to skip around and get to various parts, or if you want to go back and re-reference things, the timestamps are there. They're not super granular, but overall like news and topic and wrap up, that kind of stuff. It's all in there. So keep that in mind.
I gotta say though, what I'm looking forward to with this new arc in Dragon Ball Super is he finally has sensible panel layouts where he's not cramming everything in.
That is certainly going to be a part when we do a real review of it. This is not going to be a review of the arc, because we're only a chapter and a half into it. Right. But yeah, I mean, that's as obvious as it gets as we transition.
I can tell what's going on.
Oh, man.
And I haven't even seen this arc before.
Right. Which is a good thing.
The opposite was true for the tournament, because everything was crammed in so much.
Oh, all right. So that all being said, Julian, kind of following up on a previous episode, we're going to wrap up the last interview from the Super Dragon Ball Heroes 8th anniversary guidebook, because that's a world mission related. We're just going to kind of start there and move our way forward. So again, it's a jam-packed episode. Enjoy everything we have coming your way this episode. Let's get on into this episode. So obviously there's Jump Festa and V-Jump and official website, world mission news, all that kind of jazz. Julian, let's start with that interview. It's the third of kind of like the main interviews in the Super Dragon Ball Heroes 8th anniversary book that came out in November.
So they're talking to Sōya Mikumo, who is a producer for Bandai Namco Entertainment. And they're talking about the development process and a little bit about some behind-the-scenes stuff on Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission, which is coming to the Nintendo Switch in the near future.
I guess let's set this up by saying, okay, so it's coming to the Switch. That's new for the series. The previous home ports have all been on the 3DS, which worked great for Dragon Ball Heroes because it kind of mirrors the arcade where you have two screens, where you have the bottom touch panel card screen, and then you have the top screen, which has all the action. We got Dragon Ball Heroes Ultimate Mission, we got Dragon Ball Heroes Ultimate Mission 2, and then we got Dragon Ball Heroes Ultimate Mission X, which was kind of like a love letter / swan song for the pre-Super Dragon Ball Heroes. It really included as much as they possibly could. So Here we are with Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission, this being the fourth home / portable port / conversion adaptation of Dragon Ball Heroes. We're over here on the Nintendo Switch now. That kind of makes sense. 3DS is actually still alive and slightly kicking. It's doing a little doggy paddle behind everything, but it's technically still alive, but they wanted to go over to the Switch. I think that makes sense. There's going to be some concessions going away from two screens here, though. But let's get into the interview a little bit now that we've set the stage for what is this game.
Yes, so they get a little bit into why it's on the Switch. But so they start out just asking him about the process of getting into the development of Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission. I'm going to just call it World Mission from now on because that's kind of a mouthful.
Yes.
Okay. And he says, for the Dragon Ball Heroes game series, Ultimate Mission X was kind of, as you say, like the culmination of that, and they made it with that intent in mind. And thanks to that, they got a lot of good responses from the users and the players. And so they decided to step into the development for Super Dragon Ball Heroes on a home console. They were debating whether to go with the 3DS or the Nintendo Switch, but in terms of the current state of the market, with just the momentum behind the Nintendo Switch, as well as the graphics for Super Dragon Ball Heroes, which are a step up from the original Dragon Ball Heroes, they felt like the Nintendo Switch was the good choice, and that's what they went with.
Yeah, I was always railing against Ultimate Mission 2. It kind of ran like hot garbage. They seemed like they finally figured out how to tap a little extra juice out of the 3DS, and not even the new 3DS. My understanding is that it ran well on the base model too. I've been playing on the new model with Ultimate Mission X, but a relatively steady frame rate in that game was kind of surprising when I popped in Ultimate Mission X.
And I feel like the way they're going, this is my personal opinion now, I'm not reading from the interview, but I imagine if they do a next generation update of the Switch, it's going to maybe have a miniaturized version as well, and that would be perfect as a portable console.
Yeah.
And that probably will end up supplanting the 3DS at some point in the future.
Nintendo's always done this. There was the classic explanation of, the DS is our third pillar, separate from the Game Boy Advance and the console market. And Nintendo made a concerted effort to actually combine their console and their handheld divisions over the past previous years. But like you said, a real dedicated portable. I mean, the Switch is portable, but it's also like a real console and just hanging out there in your knapsack. Doesn't quite fit in your pocket at the same time either.
Right.
Nintendo was known for multiple hardware revisions, never mind iterations within revisions. So I think it's very clear we'll get iterations of the Switch at some point in the near future. But like you said, it's all separate from the interview here, but sure.
Yes. So anyhow, then they ask Mr. Mikumo if he had any moments during the development process where he thought, this is awesome. Because, of course, this is a promotional interview.
Oh, tell me he talks about Broly. Tell me.
Not this time.
All right.
And he says, first of all, it really was that they were really able to recreate the experience of Super Dragon Ball Heroes on the Switch. So Dimps is developing the game.
Right.
And the very first ROM that they got, when they tried playing it on the actual console, he remembers getting this just so in such intense emotions that he was like shaking.
Aww.
Just because as the developer, what he was worried about the most is whether the huge amounts of data in the game would actually run
yeah.
on the console. But they managed to clear that hurdle at the very first stage. After all, the Dragon Ball Heroes machine was massively upgraded for Super Dragon Ball Heroes, and that time the players themselves, he imagines, went, wow, this is awesome.
It doesn't look that much better. It really does. It looks like up-res PS2 graphics because it is, but anyway.
Yeah. and he imagines that he was able to experience some of the same feeling with that. Really wants everyone to see for themselves because of this promotional interview. They ask, well, it's been announced to include Up Through Universe Mission 2, but as a player, of course, they are hoping for missions after that. And he says, well, first of all, let us concentrate on getting this to finish completion so we can sell it. And after that, they will take into the players' opinions and their requests, take them into account going forward. But for now, they're concentrating on just getting it ready.
I mean, Ultimate Mission 2 got a little bit extra support, and Ultimate Mission X definitely got some extra support post-release. I expect that World Mission will do the same. But we are kind of getting a downgrade in many ways. When you look at Ultimate Mission X, how it included literally every mission from every previous upgrade and iteration of Dragon Ball Heroes, in addition to its own original story, in addition to things like its like match or scenario creation mode, which I know World Mission is going to have some of that as well, but we're not going to have as many cards. They're not going back and adding all of the pre-Super Dragon Ball Heroes cards.
Well, that said, they still have over 1,100 cards.
They do, which sounds like a lot, but as someone who's been slowly plotting their way through Ultimate Mission X, there's a lot of cards out there.
Plus, I'm sure they're giving themselves room for sequels as well, which
of course
include more stuff. They can't do everything with the first one, or else where they have to go from there,
Right.
But so the interview continues with the interview saying, okay, so we can rest assured about the gameplay. And then there's one other thing that they're curious about, which is the story mode. And Mikumo actually mentions that the story this time is based on Dragon Ball Heroes Victory Mission, which was previously serialized in V-Jump.
Mm-hmm.
And in the stories modes up till now, it was sort of set that the main character was you, the player. But this time they'll have the main character Beat.
Yeah, very specifically Beat from Victory Mission.
Yep, through which you will enter the world of the story.
Who's popped up before, kind of like little things here and there, but this is very, like, he's front and center, like, this is actually Beat.
Right, they mention him by name and thing. And there are other characters who are basically the hero avatars, but they're human forms, which match the way they appeared in Victory Mission in the trailer.
Right, we saw Note and Froze and someone else, I forgot.
I forget too. Anyway, so he says he likes the idea of having these life-size children become a team in Dragon Ball Heroes. They thought, well, maybe they could make the story mode for this game like that. And if you look at the logo for Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission, you'll notice these like multicolor little accents on either side.
Mm-hmm.
And those actually represents the colors for the members of the Dragon Ball Heroes team.
Oh, all right.
On the characters in Victory Mission. And then they say, lastly, they want him to say as much as possible about the mysterious new character we will also get into in a minute. Because obviously this book is several months old now and doesn't have all the latest information that we know.
Right. We have been getting a tease of this character for a couple months, and this was still in the tease era. But we'll get to it. Yep.
So Mikumo says... So recent Dragon Ball characters have largely been human types, or at least that was his impression. So they wanted to go with more of an alien type taste, like a Frieza for this one. There are exciting secrets, but you'll have to read them in upcoming issues of V-Jump.
which are current issues of V-Jump.
Yep, and that's how much we get. Oh, the caption for the picture with the character whose name we now know is Shiirasu says, 敵なのか、味方なのか、そして物語はにどう関わっていくのか、未知なるデザインの新キャラに期待してくれ. So is he an enemy? Is he an ally? And how will he be involved in the story? This new character with a mysterious design is something you will have to look forward to.
Well, that basically brings us to, like we just said, the current issue of V-Jump, as it just came out, the February 29 issue. Remember, V-Jump is forward dated to 2 months, so even though it's December 21st when it comes out, it is the February 2019 issue. And Julian, we pretty much have a breakdown of who this character is, and then we ended up getting a trailer to accompany it along with Jump Festa. So we know the character's name, and we know a little bit more detail about him. Can you break down the character's name for us first here, and then our theories on what it may be and why we're going to spell it, what we're spelling it for now?
Yes, so it's Shiirasu. It's all in katakana. It's shi, a line to lengthen the vowel, da, su. And in terms of what our interpretation of this is, we've noticed that Jako, whose full name is Jako Chirimen Tempi Boshi, is based on Chirimen Jako, which is a kind of food made up of dried fish, which are sort of crinkly. So Chirimen Jako is sort of these crinkly dried fish. And then introduced in the latest chapter of Dragon Ball Super in V-Jump, the arc that's not in the TV show, is Merusu, another member of the Galactic Patrol, whose name appears to be based on Surume, which is shredded dried squid. So with these seafood names in mind, we suspect that this character's name is Shiirasu, based on Shiirasu, I should say, which is like young sardines or whitebait, which are another topping you can put on rice, just like Jako. So that is our hunch, our assumption, and for that reason, we are spelling it in Romaji Shiirasu. And we should also note that this character was designed by Toyotaro, who is also responsible for the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc in Dragon Ball Super.
Yes.
So
if anyone's going to be slavish to name pun series, it's probably him.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've seen this thrown out there too. Oh, it's the exact same kana as Cirrus, is in like a cirrus cloud. And, you know, he's got this kind of like wavy design to him.
I suppose, but that's not actually Cirrus. The word in Japanese does not resemble the English word at all. And it actually escapes me what the Japanese words is, but it's something un.
Ken-un.
This is why dictionaries exist. Ken-un, yeah. So that doesn't sound anything like Shiirasu.
But, well, I guess people would say, oh, it's just like tarankusu, seru. They're approximating our word.
Not really. I mean, thing is, tarankusu, seru are words that do exist in English, but they also exist alongside their Japanese counterparts in common parlance in Japanese.
Okay, well, there you go.
Whereas cirrus, the English word for that kind of cloud, does not.
Fair enough. All right. So we know what this character looks like. We know what their name is. So in V-Jump, and then also in the trailer where we kind of get to see him in action a little bit, kind of appears, starts talking about justice, which we've certainly heard before in the series. He absolutely knows who the Toki no Kaioshin, the Kaioshin of time, is, the god of time in the series here that we originally met in Dragon Ball's universe, but was also mentioned Dragon Ball Online.
Yes.
We tend to refer to her as Chronoa, as she has been dubbed in other ancillary material to get a better name for her. He kind of shows up at the Time Nest, talking about justice, knows who the Kaioshin of time is, takes care of Trunks with kind of no effort whatsoever, and he's got the mark of the Galactic Patrol.
Yes, indeed. So it actually seems that he is a former member of the Galactic Patrol, according to the narration in the trailer. But it's unclear exactly what his relationship is to them now. He seems to be an antagonist, judging by his behavior. That's much we have to go on. Also, Toyotaro does have a comment in the latest V-Jump, which says he wanted to bring out a strong-looking and also even handsomer look for him. He was particularly attentive to the design around his waist and his hips. The idea that he should look as though he's well-versed in martial arts. And he also mentions that he drew a number of potential designs that were rejected, and he's using them as sort of minor characters in his manga.
That's good. That kind of calls back to what we were talking about with some of the Super History books, where one of the rejected designs for Demigra actually turned out to effectively be Mechi Kabula, kind of like as is.
Yes. Now, there's also in this spread not only something related to the Galactic Patrol, but these mysterious new characters, or they say a mystery leads to another mystery. Is these two heroes who are known as Great Saiyaman 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And Great Saiyaman 3 appears to protect the hero Beat in the story mode. And we haven't really been exposed to Great Saiyaman 4 in terms of video content, I believe, yet. So it's a mystery. One of them has green type clothes and the other one has red. We don't really know a lot about them yet.
Right.
This is mostly just hype text on the page here.
So saying we're getting into this like major hype territory with also major reveals. At this point, we're also only about 4 months out for the release of the game. Turns out it's coming out April 4th in Japan. I guess this is also an appropriate place to mention. We've noted this in a news post on the website, but Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission was apparently rated by the Australian Arts Board for release there. And Play Asia, one of the import gaming online retailers, recently tweeted that apparently the mainland Asian version is going to include English subtitles. So it really seems like World Mission is going to be the first piece of Dragon Ball Heroes media to truly get an international release. That's not officially confirmed from Bandai Namco themselves.
Nice.
It seems like it's very much coming in the near future, though. So I guess we can look forward to that. Did want to mention that here because we're talking about World Mission, everything getting out there. It seems like it's coming.
Yep. Oh, I do have one other thing to add about the Great Saiyaman 3 and 4.
Okay, sure.
Just skimming through the page, it looks like number 4, at least, is a transformation feature of the hero switch, which I believe is the thing that Beat wears on his arm.
Gotcha.
So if you choose number 4, he can...
So Beat is Great Saiyaman 4?
I believe so, but it doesn't explain who Great Saiyaman 3 is.
But he shows up and protects you, I think, from Kula. The official website for Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission also updated, kind of the same kind of things where we get a look at the new antagonist here, look at Trunks. There's some info. It's pretty much repeats, I believe, of things we've seen. But then at the bottom, it also tells us we have some new characters coming, and that's clearly just the Xeno versions of Son Goku and Vegeta. We can tell from the outfits, and if you can't tell from the stuff other than the outfits as well, welcome to Dragon Ball.
Right. And Toriyama in particular is always careful about creating unique silhouettes for his characters. And luckily, the other designers who have worked on the series generally follow suit in that regard.
Yeah.
It does mention that there will be changes occurring in both the real world and the Dragon Ball world. So that's similar to the Evil Dragon mission arc.
Yes, exactly.
In Victory Mission, where something similar occurs.
Well, that brings us to kind of where we are right now. And let's briefly mention, because this is going to be present day, and then we're going to take it back to the beginning for a primer. So over in the Dragon Ball Super manga, Julian, we have entered a completely new arc, original to the manga. Broly was flown over, and instead we're going into the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc.
Oh, you had to go there.
This arc begins kind of where Broly ends, I guess you could say. We get these characters that show up. Again, we're into only the first full chapter of it. It began last month as the Tournament of Power ended, and then we got the brief glimpse of Broly, and then it transitions into this new arc. I mean, we knew that there are plenty of other Galactic Patrol members out there, but it seems one of them actually has a mission right now to come do something. They're looking for the Dai Kaioshin, who is inside of Majin Buu still.
Yes, it appears that the Dai Kaioshin has some sort of relation to Moro, a villain who was imprisoned in the Galactic Penitentiary 10 million years ago and is now broken out. And they need the Dai Kaioshin's power to perhaps be able to stop him?
So that's kind of how that chapter last month ended, and then we get into the first full chapter of it this month in VJump, and also for free on Viz's website. We're not going to get into that content right now. That'll be for future commentary and review material purposes. But Julian, it seems like this is where Toyotaro is taking it. I'm very curious whether it was his idea to do this, whether it was Toriyama's idea to do this, whether it was Shueisha's idea to do this especially instead of adapting the Broly movie into the manga. One of the major critiques of the Dragon Ball Super manga is that it kind of doesn't stand on its own. As much as the Dragon Ball Super television series also has some issues, most notably never actually explaining why Pilaf and crew have been reduced to babies, even though that was explained in Battle of Gods. They kind of overlooked that. And Toyotaro, I wouldn't say took a jab at it. He explained it in the manga version, but that's separate from the anime version. But then even over in the manga version, Battle of Gods was cruised through in 4 chapters. They didn't even do Resurrection F, and
used a bonus chapter from Saikyo. No, it's Jump Victory Carnival now.
Yeah, the Victory Carnival.
He used a 2-page bonus chapter to explain that.
Well, I mean, that's what those manga chapters have always been. All 5 of them, I think, we're up to at this point.
Yeah,
they're all
something like that.
They're explanations of things, which is fine. That's what they're supposed to be. Anyway, what I'm getting at is that it doesn't stand alone. So Broly also doesn't have a manga adaptation now, other than a single panel. But now we're going into original territory, where the television series, which I guess let's briefly mention Jump Festa took place over the weekend. Julian, you translated Toriyama's comment and Toyotaro's comment.
Right.
Nothing new was announced in terms of anime or film or manga.
Despite what you may have heard from a certain official account, I think they were a little too excited and jumped to conclusions before they had the time to process what was being said. That's my charitable interpretation.
Sure. I guess we can also mention, technically, the Super Dragon Ball Heroes promotional anime is continuing, and that's all announced in conjunction with Jump Festa. We're going on to this giant universal space war.
Yeah, that's something, I guess.
But we're not talking about that here. Just want to acknowledge that was announced. But no new real content was announced. The Galactic Prisoner, the Galactic Patrol Prisoner, try saying that 3 times fast, had already started, but this is where we are. So they didn't talk about anything, why they're doing this. I don't know. I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious, why now?
I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of think maybe in a meta perspective, maybe they want an opportunity for Toyotaro to show that he actually has the chops, that he can do this sort of thing when he's not just slavishly adhering to an existing story. I mean, even then, he's still working with Akira Toriyama on this, but I feel like maybe they're trying to set him up further as the one to sort of carry on that legacy.
Yeah, give him a chance. I mean, the Tournament of Power, especially coming off the Trunks arc, which they extended so far in the manga, and then the Tournament of Power as it began, where they did all the original content there at the beginning, and it seemed like they were going to extend that out, and then suddenly we picked up the pace and we cruised through, and you blink and you'd miss the end of the Tournament of Power in the manga.
Right.
And here we are in this original arc, and you already mentioned, the panel layout. I think this is truly going to be, finally, since Victory Mission, this is going to be Toyble's chance to shine.
Maybe. I mean, I commented at the beginning of the episode, I don't remember if you said you'd cut that out or not, just that it feels like that it has a chance to breathe for once.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly curious as to where it's going to go from here. I'd like to see where the story goes.
Yeah, so we have a future for the Galactic Patrol, and that brings us to, I would say, the main meat of the episode, but Julian, we've already been recording for half an hour. Well, that's great. So, maybe we'll match that and we'll see where we go from here. So this is going to be kind of like the back half, but it is actually the front half of our discussion. We're going to do a little bit of a Galactic Patrol primer. So let's transition on into part 2 of our news topic. Julian, the idea of a space patrol actually kind of predates what we're going to talk about in a moment. We had some filler in the Dragon Ball Z TV series. There were some people out there worried about Frieza, and then we got some Kanzenshuu citations on this. What had been said pre-BFF collaborations?
Yes. So in the terms, the explanation of the terms involved in Dragon Ball and Kanzenshuu 7, you have a reference in the entry on space that there is apparently this space police organization that exists. However, they do not have the power to go up against Frieza or the Saiyans. And that's all the Kanzenshuu really says about it. And it kind of comes out of nowhere because you don't really get that kind of mention in the series anywhere.
Well, like I said, other than that filler, after the Saiyan arc, we're taking off to Namek, even before we get to the fake Namek stuff, where we run into the space folks out there.
Oh, those guys, yeah.
With like the mirrored ship and everything. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what they're referring to here, just like leaving the option to explore this further if need be.
Yes.
I'd be remiss not to mention, because I have this below all the other citations in the Gods and Cosmos guide on the website. Additionally, the background information published in Akira Toriyama The World Anime Special on Telus' Henchman states that Amond was originally a galactic criminal imprisoned by the Galactic Police on planet Nuts before being freed by Telus. So that's just one other little mention to throw in there alongside the Kanzenshuu citation.
Now, it's interesting that when we finally do catch up with them in Dragon Ball material, they're not named the Space Police Organization, although in the latest lore introduced in Dragon Ball Super, this new manga arc, they're kind of retconning it to say that they used to be the Galactic Police or something like that.
Yeah.
Before they became the Galactic Patrol. But it's interesting how this sort of concept is sort of evolved. And if you get into Jaco the Galactic Patrolman, which we will, there's a work based on his exploits called Chaco the Space Policeman. I forget exactly what they called it in the official translation, which happens to be a flop.
Well, let's continue onward. We kind of have nothing about Space Police for a long time, and we're in a post-Dragon Ball world. Grab my issue here. Julian, this is Jump Square. We're talking about May 2008. So we are square in kind of like a nothing's going on other than merchandise. We're pre-Dragon Ball Kai, pre-evolution, even at this point. Obviously, some of that stuff may be in the works or, in the thoughts of marketers and producers somewhere. Obviously, Evolution was filming and all that kind of jazz. But in terms of Dragon Ball, we were just looking at video games every year at this point.
Pretty much. This was the sort of interregnum. The Dragon Ball DVDs had come out. The Kanzenban was all finished. The most recent stuff that Toriyama had been doing was Dr. Slump related, because they had the Dr. Slump DVD sets.
Oh, that's right.
And in fact, if we want to talk about Jump Square in particular, Jump Square is the successor for monthly Shonen Jump, which had run since the 1970s. But its last issue was in 2007. And one of the last issues of monthly Shonen Jump also had an Akira Toriyama one-shot, which was Dr. Slump one-shot. And then that magazine went defunct, and some of the continuing stories ended up elsewhere for a while. But then they decided they were going to introduce Jump Square, which is this new monthly magazine. And this, the May 2008 issue, released in April of that year, is the very first issue. And so naturally, if you're going to be introducing a new magazine, you want to bring out the big talent. So,
of course,
what bigger name do they have at Shueisha in manga, perhaps besides Akira Toriyama?
I would say Masakazu Katsura is where you go.
Well, he's here too.
I guess let's briefly explain. These two are very good friends going far back. I would say the most candid Toriyama that we have is when these two are talking together.
Absolutely. They are interesting. They go way back. They're really good friends, and they spend the entire time talking, just needling each other about stuff.
Which interview is it where they actually have to pause and there's captions like, and suddenly Katsura Sensei appears?
Oh, that was from Daizenshuu 7's Shenlong Times. And then they said, with his arrival, the interview takes an unexpected turn. Just goes completely off the rails and they just start arguing.
We get good stuff out of it, but it's very clear that you get these two together and you're going to come up with something special.
Oh, and even way back in Dr. Slump, Toriyama would make fun of Katsura, have him show up as an even bigger country bumpkin than himself. And and actually the futon ga futonda, the futon blew away joke that Goku uses at Kaio's planet, that was originally used in Dr. Slump. And when it's used in Dr. Slump, Toriyama actually credits Katsura for the joke.
That's nice.
So basically blame him because this isn't funny.
All right, so let's talk about what is here, because this is the, I guess you'd say, the real start of the Galactic Patrol. So tell me about Sachie-chan Gu.
Yes, so do you want me to tell you about the background first or about the story itself?
Let's do the background, and then so I guess let's preface we can't really preface something that we're like 40 minutes into, but we're not going to do a review of Awesomeness Style on the stories. I think we're going to save that for another time. This is just, a primer for what these are, where they're published, and how it all leads to the current Dragon Ball material. So I guess give me the background on it, and then we'll briefly mention what the story's about, and then we'll kind of keep going from there to the next ones.
So at the time, they were getting ready to introduce this new magazine in Shueisha, and the editor-in-chief, Masahiko Ibaraki, basically came to Toriyama and Katsura and discussed the idea of them working together, with Toriyama doing a script and Katsura doing the art. And so Toriyama, in his way, he sort of did his hint that maybe if it's just the story, I might be able to do it, which if you read between the lines sounds like him trying to weasel out of it.
It sounds like Toriyama a lot recently over the years, and then he gets roped into doing more.
Yep, but then they took him at his word. So, and he thought maybe since their styles are sort of completely the opposite, it could be fun, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm reading through the interview that's in this issue, which is pretty extensive, just wheedling each other constantly. Katsura told him there's no content in this story, and he forced him to put in more like human things. And if it weren't for Katsura, that he probably would have taken out the actual emotional element of the thing entirely. So it's just constantly going back and forth at each other. And that sounds like their process of making it as well. Just like arguing with each other over the course of the story, as well as how the story of the comic itself is supposed to be. And they also mentioned that whenever this happens, it keeps getting longer. So they intended it to be 30 pages and it turned up to be 53 pages. It's pretty interesting, the process here. It's not really what we're going through. There is a bit of a sort of retro style to it, and a very sort of departure from Katsura's usual style, which is kind of pop arty and interesting. I mean, I'm trying to think of things to say because most of the interview is them arguing with each other.
It is. It's great. Well, let's talk about the story a little bit. Again, so this is the debut issue of a new magazine. You're bringing in Toriyama, you're bringing in Katsura, kind of kick things off here. It's going to just be a one-shot. This is all self-contained in this one chapter here. We ended up with a chapter that's longer than they anticipated it being, but that's probably a little better. You get more of a complete story out of it. It's got the perviness of Toriyama with the kind of like heightened perviness of Katsura at the same time. Like you said, that kind of Katsura pop art style, a little bit more exaggerated here, kind of with that Toriyama flair to it at the same time. We get kind of like sexual crude humor combined with, I don't know, it's just like this encapsulation of these two authors put together, which makes sense because that's exactly what it is.
Absolutely. And so in terms of the basics of the story, the short version is there's this middle school girl who is the scion of a ninja clan, and she's got this weird poop-shaped birthmark on her butt, which she's self-conscious about. She's recruited by these sort of squid, 8-armed aliens from planet Octo, whose design may seem familiar if you're paying attention to Dragon Ball Super. And she goes to their planet to help them be rid of these space pirates who are terrorizing them. And she ends up helping them with the help of her ninja clan's mysterious ramen that gives her superpowers. And then at the very end, the Galactic Patrol shows up, and then she goes home with a button of the Galactic Patrol on her uniform, which happens to look exactly like the birthmark on her butt. The end. And that is the origin of the Galactic Patrol logo, I guess you could say.
Right. It's a cute little story. So, Julian, let's talk about its publication. So this is in, like you said, the debut issue, the May 2008 issue of Jump Square, published in April that year. It has since been collected as a part of the Katsura Akira compilation.
That's correct. So it's that and Jiya, which is the second collaboration between Toriyama and Katsura, which we're about to talk about. And it's nice in that it's not just a fusion of these two people's styles, but it's also a nice encapsulation of all the Galactic Patrol stuff before it gets into Dragon Ball.
Now, here's the killer. Sachie-chan has been translated and officially released in English from Viz. It was included as a part of the membership, kind of like special bonus stuff. If you were a subscriber to Shonen Jump Alpha before it was just straight up regular weekly Shonen Jump, they were doing that like 2-week delay thing for a while there before they went simultaneous, and now we're even
more simultaneous.
No, we're more than simultaneous. We are like time zone simultaneous at this point. But that was in the 2013 Shonen Jump Alpha yearbook digital bonus if you were a subscriber at that time. And then they actually sent you, if you were a subscriber, a print version of this bonus material, except not the entirety of Sachie was printed in the print edition. The entirety of it is only if you were a digital subscriber at that time. And as far as I am aware, that is the only place, the only time that Viz has ever released it. As a little bit of a comparison here, Viz translated and released Kintoki, which was a Toriyama one-shot. Kintoki was published in the 2010 number 50 issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, which was November 15th, 2010. Viz released it as part of Weekly Shonen Jump, the 2013 January 28th issue, Digital Weekly Shonen Jump. That was the only place it was included, except I'm pretty sure they've done a couple deals where if you buy the entirety of the Dragon Ball manga digital from them or even through Comixology, I believe they've tossed in Kintoki, which is not very cost effective if you want to get just the one shot. Right. But that's at least it. I have seen it included with other things out there. Sachie-chan, as far as I know, has never been included with any of those extra kind of like bonus. We'll throw it in with the package. And even now, as a part of this new Shonen Jump archives from Viz, there's like no record that Sachie-chan exists other than this 2013 yearbook, which is really unfortunate. It's like, we know it exists. We know you've translated it. You've officially released it. It feels like your digital archive is the perfect place to just dump it, but it's not out there. So here's hoping that Viz can make it available somehow, some other way. Julian, let's go to the next entry in the Galactic Patrol. What was a trilogy, and now we're kind of like further beyond. I don't even know what to call it, because when you include it as a part of Dragon Ball, it's not really its own individual series. Anyway, Jiya. So now we're into the here's AKB in Santa Outfits magazine.
Yep. So this was published in Young Jump, which, if you're not familiar with the various Jump magazines, Young Jump is a seinen magazine, which is aimed at older teenage boys and young men, and they often feature scantily clad women on the cover and in these sort of gravure sections up front. And I always always amused sending these along to you and hoping that Mary might be in the room when you opened them.
You send me Young Jumps, you send me Vintage Playboys. I never know what I'm going to get when I open the mail.
Right?
It's pretty
Isn't
good.
it that exciting?
I love it. So here we are. Sachie-chan's been out for a little bit. We get into Jiya. What year is this?
It was tail end of 2009 and the very beginning of 2010. So, yep. So it was like the early January dated issues of Young Jump for 2010, although they started in December 2009.
Right. So not quite 2 years after Sachie.
Yeah, so they had 3 chapters, and then the issue after the last chapter, they included an interview with Katsura and Toriyama.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, Katsura's name comes first because he actually has a series in the magazine at the time, which was Zetman.
Yeah, you look at the cover. I mean, it's AKB and then Katsura. Katsura stuff everywhere.
Pretty much.
Well, let's talk about Katsura a little bit, because we kind of glossed over. Yeah, he's Toriyama's friend, and we may have even said he's a manga author. I don't know if we quite said that. Katsura is incredibly famous too. So Zetman here, and I know him primarily from Video Girl Eye. That was kind of like my introduction to the world of Katsura.
And Eyes and...
Yeah, his works extend far and wide, and they run the gamut of kind of like cutely pervy to where we're getting kind of weird here.
Yeah, and although he's mostly known for his romance stuff, which ran in Weekly Shonen Jump, he started out and made his big break with Wingman, which was a transforming superhero series. And he's a really big fan of Batman, and that's definitely influenced his superhero characters.
Wingman, Zetman, you don't say.
Yes, imagine that, right? He's a big Batman fan. He's done a couple of official things in connection with figures and whatnot.
How would you describe his artwork? Because I look at it and like I kind of see a Toriyama flair to his artwork, but it's almost... Here's how I would describe it to people. I'm a big fan of, obviously, the Capcom fighting games, a big fan of the SNK fighting games. Mm-hmm. Katsura is like the SNK style to the Capcom art style. It's kind of how I feel about it. It's like a little bit more realistic to it, but still cartoony.
I feel like he tries to strike this balance. He has a style of his own. He's very stylized, but he also adds in a lot of detail. Whereas Toriyama is very stylized, but also minimal detail, and he prefers it to be more silly stylized, whereas Katsura's main aim is to make it look cool. I think that's how I would differentiate the two. Like Toriyama's ribbing him for his tone everywhere, and
right.
Katsura is complaining that he doesn't use any tone at all.
At all. So why do we think we're getting Jiya at this point? So again, we're a little under 2 years out from Sachie. Here we are over in this magazine. Katsura's already got stuff going on. What's bringing these two together to do this new series, Jiya?
Yes. So Katsura's editor actually approached him and said they'd like to do a Young Jump version of a collaboration along the lines of Sachie. And it just so happened that Toriyama had also mentioned that he wanted to do a story with a dark hero. And so he called him up and said, yeah, sure. Even though Katsura was aware that with his serialization for Zetman at the same time, it would not be fun.
A lot of work.
In fact, his author comments during those 3 chapters are like, "My body is screaming." I was like, maybe you should take a break. But but it ended up being nothing of the sort of what Toriyama had originally mentioned.
Yeah.
Which kind of pissed Katsura off. And once again, the page count just kept going up and up. And in spite of being in a seinen magazine, a lot of the seinen stuff is kind of childishly superficial.
It really is.
Oh, we have people smoking. Oh, we have a prostitute. Oh, we have more stylized violence. That's like a young teenager's interpretation of what mature is.
Exactly.
So I guess you could say Toriyama is very in tune with the young boy's mindset. So, and he never gets too complex. So even in the first chapter, you're kind of set up to expect, you kind of have an idea of who the villain really is.
Yeah.
And I should also say the designs for the Galactic Patrol are basically the same as they are at the end of Sachie, except minus a cape. And that it's interesting. The Galactic Patrolmen are at least set up to be all sort of similar looking and actually sort of these like biomechanical suits worn by a much smaller alien.
Yeah.
And that ties into some of the hijinks that occur in the course of this 3-chapter one-shot.
All right, so we've set up the magazine, why they came together. So again, this runs for 3 chapters. What's the rough overall story here?
So it's this version of the Earth that's being terrorized by these weird giant flea creatures led by this mysterious figure named Vampa. And completely coincidentally, hint, hint, this Galactic Patrolman named Jiya is looking for his colleague Justice, anyway, who mysteriously disappeared while surveying the planet Earth. So he kind of shows up and does his thing and ends up getting involved in this conflict, and along the way meets this spoiled rich girl and her chauffeur / servant, Kaede and Kyumonji, who sort of become his human allies for the course of the story. And lots of hijinks ensue. Jiya learns some interesting things about human anatomy and functions, and also stumbles upon the actual plot and has some fun battles and stuff. Oh, by the way, they do mention the Galactic King again, and also hint at some sort of cataclysm.
Also, I'm pretty sure I'm looking at a blowjob here.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah. There's possession, there's drunken kung fu, there's something for everyone, right?
I suppose so. So Jiya runs for 3 chapters, and that's the end of the Galactic Patrol. Had a great time. See you again, folks.
Actually, the first hint that there may be something else later on comes during this interview that was published right after they finished serializing Jiya.
Yeah.
Because there's this little sidebar that mentions, actually, along the way, Toriyama kind of got frustrated with the way things were going, and he kind of put it aside and drew over 40 pages of a completely different story with a different version of a Galactic Patrolman, as well as this old man.
Oh, really?
Yes, who appears to be helping fix his spaceship. This Galactic Patrolman appears to be some sort of full of himself super elite.
Well, clearly this is just a draft. It got scrapped in favor of Jiya. We'll never hear about this again.
Right. But then...
Well, jump ahead to 2013. But Julian, we have Battle of Gods going on. So, no, Toriyama can't do a Galactic Patrol story.
Well, that's interesting you should say that. Because actually, July 13th. Okay, so it was a few weeks before Obon. So it came out in July 2013, which was about 3.5 months after Battle of Gods. But we get some insight into the production process due to a couple of things that were put out on the Jump Live app, which is the predecessor to the current Shonen Jump Plus app from Shueisha, where they had a little bit of bonus content with Toriyama talking about the production process for the thing. And then again, there was a little bit in V-Jump towards the end of the year discussing Jaco after it ended. So apparently the original idea was for him to put out something to coincide with the release of Battle of Gods. But he tried to put himself on the same punishing schedule that he used when he was 30 years younger, and ended up ruining his health. And B, the story that he had originally come up with was a little too close to Battle of Gods because, of course, he rewrote the story of Battle of Gods when he was brought on the project. So they ended up being too much of the same thing. So he ended up going with instead this old draft from the Katsura collaboration and decided to make that into something else.
That's really fascinating. So the old draft that became Jaco wasn't going to be used because he created another draft of something that he didn't use because it was too close to Battle of Gods. Are we ever going to find out what that was?
It's a good question, but he mentioned that it was too close in terms of content to Battle of Gods. So I'm assuming he may have incorporated things from that into the finished movie.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
We don't know what exactly, Maybe it was the design for Beerus, maybe it was Whis, maybe it was something else.
Right. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. Because of all that stuff that he rewrote and redesigned. Okay.
So going on with that, he did this entirely digitally, and he also sort of reworked the concept a little bit because it had to be something that he would feel comfortable drawing. So he toned down the action, gave it some more humor, and he actually, the Dragon Ball connection at the end, which I guess is not a spoiler at this point, because if you've been paying attention from about Resurrection F onward, it should not be a secret.
Well, not only that, but we were talking about this, contemporary with its release when we're going, should we cover this? Should we not cover it? And then Shueisha goes, what was it, like the shocking revival of Dragon Ball?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay, yeah. I guess we're covering this.
So it turns out at the end that the character of Tights, who has been tagging along and sometimes providing vital info to Jaco and Omori, is Bulma's older sister. And Jaco was actually sent on a mission to stop a member of an evil alien race from arriving at Earth, which turns out to be Kakaroto. Except because he is a complete, not quite super elite as he thinks, he manages to completely miss the landing of the alien spacecraft and then allows the story of Dragon Ball to happen.
Yep, inadvertently saving the Earth, even though the Earth will be destroyed later, but that's fine.
This is interesting. It's not quite the same Galactic Patrol as we see in these one-shots with Katsura.
Yeah, all right, let's go in that direction, because, the story of Jaco, we've covered Jaco, we've reviewed Jaco. Hopefully you've read Jaco at this point. Even Dragon Ball Minus is now being incorporated into things like Dragon Ball Super Broly. So what are the main differences from a Galactic Patrol perspective in the world of Jaco compared to Sachie and Jiya?
So the members of the Galactic Patrol in that world appear to be, for one thing, much more credible as a force, shall we say?
Right. Sure.
They're bigger, more impressive. They appear to be these biomechanical suits, all used by these much smaller aliens. Granted, we only really see two of them who are fleshed out in any detail.
Yeah.
But we're led to assume that the entire Galactic Patrol is just like them. And they appear to have very important work and they appear to be, not actually intimidated by anybody. Whereas the Galactic Patrol that we see in the Dragon Ball universe is much like the Space Police organization that is very briefly laid out in Daizenshuu 7.
Right.
They're not that strong. There's not that many of them.
Yeah, but they're capable enough, except in the face of someone like Frieza. And we kind of even see that with Jaco, where he's like the least effective one. So clearly all these other ones can probably do something a little better than he can. But even Jaco is remotely effective.
Yeah, that's true. So they have these extinction bombs that they can use to wipe out an entire sentient species if they need to, or if they just get ticked off like Jaco might. But apparently it doesn't work on the Saiyans. They can only hold their own against a child and an adult. They're no match for adults. And of course, Frieza is so powerful they basically just have to turn a blind eye. So that lines up with the description back in Daizenshuu 7, which was released in 1996. The other thing is there's like 30. How many did they say? 33 of them?
Julian, there are 38 members of the Galactic Patrol, which handle the limited number of planets with intelligent life forms.
And in the V-Jump retrospective later that year, it also mentions almost the same wording even, just that they turn a blind eye to Frieza because they don't have the fighting power to oppose him. But anyway, there's multiple species forming the Galactic Patrol, so they don't all look the same. And features that are set up in Jiya to be actual functions of his suit, like consuming water and expelling it as steam, sort of reinterpreted as the alien species that Jaco himself. So he drinks milk and he pees out holes in his forehead.
There's a similar thing in Jiya, isn't there?
Yeah, so Jiya drinks water and then steam comes out the side of his head.
So it's just like an embellishment on that.
Yes. Jaco looks superficially similar to Jiya, except that Jaco is an actual alien who's wearing like this...
some stuff.
Yeah, some sort of upper body armor that's apparently the Galactic Patrol uniform, except that the rest of him is apparently just his naked body.
And I mean, he's the masked man, so
he's not happy about that. But yeah, so it's a very Toriyama take because Jocko is vain, overestimates his abilities, and clearly is not necessarily the super elite that he thinks of himself as, although against human opponents, he is more than adequate.
So the Galactic Patrol kind of evolves over the course of these 3 series, and we get to the current incarnation of it that exists in Jocko that seems like that's going to be the basis for moving forward. That is the Galactic Patrol. But even then, like you said, they're kind of adapting what they want to do with it a little bit. And by they, I mean Toyotaro, maybe Toriyama?
So it's interesting to see. I mean, by this point, the Galactic Patrol, although obviously Sachie and Jiya should probably be looked to more as prototypes rather than actual part of the continuity.
Right. They're like the Dragon Boy and the Tongpu.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, even the Galactic Patrol logo is slightly different. It doesn't have the curve. It's like an actual sort of angular thingy, although it's definitely based on it. And so at this point, I mean, at the end of the collected version of Jocko, the Galactic Patrolman is where we get Dragon Ball Minus from. And Dragon Ball Minus, as you said earlier in the podcast, has now been incorporated into the movie that's currently playing in Japanese theaters. So at this point, we are verily, I'm suddenly gone.
I say thee verily.
Yes. It is pretty much inextricably intertwined with Dragon Ball now.
So what do you think the future is? We started in the present. We went back to 2008, which doesn't feel all that long ago to me.
10 years ago, Mike.
We're back to 2018. Dude, we were already doing the podcast for a few years.
Yeah, we started in 2005. That was before I went to Japan for the first time.
It reminds me, I was just watching this episode of Futurama last night where Leela goes to Nibbler's home planet and he's like, when the Big Bang happened, our race was already 17 years old or 17 minutes old or something like that. Like, oh, we were already doing the podcast for 3 years at this point. So, Julian, what is the future of the Galactic Patrol then?
I don't know. I'm curious to see where this arc goes. I hope it's not like a rehash of the Prison Planet arc from Dragon Ball Heroes. I want it to be its own thing. Mm-hmm. I'm curious as how they're going to incorporate the Kaioshin because they, apart from the Kaioshin of other universes, they haven't seen a lot of love in Dragon Ball Super. I mean, I guess the East Kaioshin and Kibito finally came unfused.
Do you think Toyotaro is going to try to finally resolve why the hell does Universe 7 have so many Kaioshin?
That's a good question, because we've only seen like one Kaioshin and one God of Destruction for all the other universes, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And even in Universe 10, Zamasu was going to be the successor to Goas. He was an apprentice. He wasn't a current Kaioshin.
I'm very, very curious. I think this is a great place for Toyotaro to be right now. It's a chance for him to grow as an author, as an artist, under the guidance of Toriyama. Julian, do we know what the editor setup is for Toyotaro? I've seen a lot of people say, and this is not wrong, that in essence Toriyama kind of like acts as an editor for Toyotaro, but certainly he speaks to a higher power at Shueisha.
I would assume so. Like, even when Toriyama, even as he is now, he still has an editor that he answers to.
Yeah, I mean, Toriyama had an editor on Jocko. It's not like he just did this series and they took it as is.
Yeah, they let him have a little bit more creative leeway, and they'll obviously let him go for as long as he wants, regardless of how popular it is, because of who he is. But, yeah, they still make practical suggestions to him. And I would assume that both Toryotaro and Toriyama have an editor higher up. It may be somebody who is lower on the totem pole, or it may be Ioku directly who talks to them, but they don't generally spell out who their editor is the way they used to. It used to be that they would refer to them by name and flesh out their personalities, but They usually these days they use like a letter to refer to them, and unless you know who they are in detail, it can be difficult to sort of suss out who they're talking about.
Yeah, to that point, actually, what I just said, Julian, Toriyama's editor on Jocko, I think we only got that name in like a digital bonus, which if you didn't happen to read that, you wouldn't know who the editor was.
I believe so.
Because we reference it in the translation, and you referenced the thing that we could no longer load because it was on like the VJump Plus.
Okay, so it was Kohei Onishi, because he was the one who was giving comments about the series as new chapters were uploaded to the Jump Live app.
Yeah, that was it.
And I think the way they had his name written was like the letter O plus Nishi, the kanji, because there are a couple of other people who also start with O. But anyway, so that's how we knew who he was. It's similar a little bit to the very brief blurbs that the editors give in the table of contents of Weekly Jump at the bottom of the page. But they sort of did away with that when they moved to the Jump Live format, or I'm sorry, the Jump Plus format. So you only if you have the digital version of Weekly Jump, you get those in the table of contents.
Gotcha.
But you don't have those for the individual like online only serials. But that's how we knew who Toriyama's editor was. It wasn't flat out stated. We had to put the pieces together.
That's kind of everything. That is the primer to the Galactic Patrol. That was Sachie. That was Jiya. That was Jocko. Here we are in the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc in the Dragon Ball Super manga. Julian, we will certainly come back around to Sachie and Jiya. I would like to do a proper kind of like a review of Awesomeness style, similar to what we did also with Dragon Boy and Tongpu when we were doing the Dragon Ball prototypes. We'll come back around to that, though. I think they're great stories, and like you said, they're these prototype works. They weren't intended to be prototypes, but kind of they ended up that way in retrospect for what became the current Galactic Patrol. So no set timeline for that. That's just, we'll get to it in 2019. That's just kind of in the bucket list for the upcoming year. So let's talk about what's in the immediate future for the podcast here. Julian, the last week of every year / first week of every year, what we try to schedule in is a look back at the year. What are the top stories on Kanzenshuu from the year? And we check in on the predictions we made the previous year to see how we did, and we make new predictions for the new year. So that's certainly coming up. I haven't quite scheduled that out with anyone, so let's work on scheduling that, I guess.
Okay.
That's coming up in the near future. People probably wondering, like, hey, Mike, the movie's out in Japan. When are you guys going to review it? Yeah, we are certainly going to be doing that. We had lots of people over in Japan over the last couple weeks.
I feel like I'm the only person who's not over in Japan right now. I couldn't work it into my schedule or my budget this year. I am going to see my family early next year, but I'm not sure whether the timing will work out. We'll see.
Right.
But I do have the novelization that I've been reading through, so I know what happens. I can picture it in my head.
We have, I hope, some good folks on tap working on scheduling that. We are going to do a formal review of Dragon Ball Super Broly that'll hopefully hit in the next week or two, and that'll be ahead of the international release, and then we'll review it all over again when we do that. It's not often that we review dubbed things, but we did it for Battle of Gods. I think we did it for Resurrection F. I seem to recall doing that. I saw Resurrection F, I don't know, like 8 times between all the different premieres and local things. And then actually we got a screener for that one too. So I'm really confused about how many times and where and when I saw Resurrection F in what languages.
Even now I've only seen Battle of Gods and Resurrection F in Japanese. I may end up seeing Broly in English first. Please forgive me. I will eventually see it in Japanese as well. At least I'll have read the novelization in Japanese.
There you go.
That counts for something.
Right.
And I'm going to try and get both the regular and the super versions of the movie pamphlet with its interviews and whatnot.
Yeah.
I've also got the Dragon Ball Super Broly Times now, and that has some interesting interviews as well. Some of it's very basic information, like this is this character and this is what they did in the past, but they do have actual interviews with people who worked on the movie as well. So I'll try and get those.
Right.
At some point. I also have the Resurrection F Times from 3 years ago as well.
All right. So those are some of the very near upcoming things. A couple other good topics I've been kicking around that I'm excited to get to in 2019. Julian, I guess let's plug some things that are on the website. Some of the things we talked about on this very episode. Sachie, Jiya, Jako related things. I guess you can just head over to the translations page and hit that Galactic Patrol filter, right?
Absolutely. That has pretty much everything that we've translated up till now of all that stuff. And it gives you a lot of insight into how things got the way they are now. So definitely give that a look.
And then if you're looking to purchase things, the Katsura Akira compilation is just one little tankobon sized book. You're going to get Sachie and Jiya in there. Obviously, Jako has, like I mentioned, unfortunately, Sachie has only been, fully digitally released if you were a member in 2013. So there's no great way to get that in English. Jiya does not have an official English release. Jako, on the other hand, of course, does have an English release. It was published simultaneously by Viz digitally, and it does have a collected edition. A lot of sales on that recently. People have been grabbing it for like $5, digital and in print. So definitely check out Jako.
Yeah, get it print, digital. I think you can access it via the Shonen Jump archives now if you have a membership.
You can. I think
chapter by chapter.
3 chapters are probably free. That seems to be what they're doing. And then if you're a subscriber, which is $2 a month, I think they have up to chapter 10 right there, so it's almost done.
There's a lot of promotions like they do on Shonen Jump Plus as well.
Yeah,
they give you 3 free chapters of some hot series, and then they hope that you'll buy the rest.
So check out Jako, and then that brings us to Dragon Ball Super. So last month's chapter and this month's chapter are available free from Viz. If you want to buy it in Japanese, you're going to be looking to get V-Jump issues, but if you're looking to get V-Jump issues, man, it is not easy right now. Amazon Japan has shifted to V-Jump and Psycho Jump being add-on items, which means you can only include them of orders of 2,000 yen or more, except Julian, when the listing first goes up, it's not yet categorized as an add-on item. It seems a little under 24 hours. You can still order it individually. I have confirmed and done this for the last issues of Psycho Jump and V-Jump.
Clever girl.
So I am generally on top of manically refreshing Amazon Japan listings looking for these issues. So I guess you can follow me on Twitter at VegettoEX for when links to these things go up. Julian, people can follow you at Sōya Jedi. They can follow the website proper as a whole at Kanzenshuu, www.kanzenshuu.com. That is Kanzenshuu. I have been Mike. That has been Julian. There is also a Heath. There is also a Jake.
Yes, we also have contributors. We have a Stacy now who does stuff for us.
Yes, Stacy just sent over the Norihito Sumitomo interview, and by just, I mean like 2 days ago. So look at that.
Up on the site pretty soon.
Yeah, look at that, and I'll post that up. So that's coming soon. That is the next piece of content, I think, coming. Julian, you, like we mentioned, you translated Toriyama's and Toyotaro's comments. I sent that over to you to review before I post it, so check that out. So there's certainly written content alongside the podcast. That is everyone that's, well, there's other folks doing cool stuff as well, but it's holidays. Everyone, take your time. Enjoy your family and friends. Julian and I will sit here and podcast, but that's fine. That's it. Wrap it up, please.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to this week's edition of Kanzenshuu, the podcast. Thank you very much. Take us next time. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and see you later.